9 hikers sliced their own tent open from the inside, then ran out barefoot into air that hit almost 30 degrees below zero. Whatever terrified them left no footprints of its own, no drag marks, no sign of any struggle anywhere near the camp. Their bodies surfaced slowly over the next 3 months, scattered across a slope the local Mansi people had already named the Mountain of the Dead. 2 of the 9 died with their chests caved completely in, ribs shattered on both sides, injuries a coroner compared to a violent car crash. Yet there wasn't one single bruise anywhere on their skin, nothing to explain how that much force ever got inside their bodies. Stay with me tonight, because the single strangest detail in this entire case doesn't surface until the very last few minutes. It was late January of 1959 when 10 students and young engineers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute packed their sleds for Otorten Mountain. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, careful and methodical, the kind of man who double-checked every strap and every knot. This wasn't a casual winter walk in the snow. They needed this exact, brutal route to earn a rare, top-tier hiking certification. One member, Yuri Yudin, turned back early after his sciatica flared up in the brutal, bone-deep cold of the mountains. He said his goodbyes at a remote outpost, laughing with his friends, never imagining it would be the last time he ever saw them alive. The remaining 9 pushed on through waist-deep snow and wind strong enough to knock a grown man sideways off the trail. There was Zinaida Kolmogorova, Ludmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, and Rustam Slobodin, all seasoned skiers who had hiked together for years. There was Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko, closer than brothers, and Nikolai Thibobrignols, the quiet one who rarely complained. And one outsider, Semyon Zolotaryov, a war veteran nearly a decade older than the rest, who joined this trip almost at the very last minute. On February 1st, the group made a decision that investigators still puzzle over today, decades after the fact. Instead of dropping into the shelter of the tree line, just a short hike below them, they pitched their tent on the open slope of Kholat Syakhl. Maybe they lost the trail in a sudden whiteout. Maybe they simply wanted the practice of a harder, more exposed campsite. Either way, it left all 9 of them out in the open that night, with nothing around them to break the howling wind. Sometime in the darkness, something made 9 experienced, rational hikers slash their way out of their own tent instead of unzipping the door. They ran down the mountainside through total darkness, in temperatures pushing 30 degrees below zero, without a single flashlight between them. Some wore only socks. One wore a single boot. Several had almost nothing at all covering their bare feet in that killing cold. Not one of them turned back for a weapon, a knife, an axe, anything at all to fight off whatever was behind them. Whatever it was, it made 9 people choose frostbite and pitch darkness over staying inside that tent for even one more second. When the group missed their expected return date, worried families and classmates pushed hard for an immediate search of the mountain. Rescuers finally found the abandoned tent on February 26th, half collapsed under fresh snow, sliced open from the inside in several long cuts. Their skis still stood planted upright nearby, completely untouched, as if no one inside had ever planned on leaving in a hurry. Following a line of footprints down toward a distant tree line, searchers found the first 2 bodies lying under a tall, scarred cedar. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko lay stripped down to their underwear, close beside the ashes of a small, dead fire. The branches above them were snapped and broken all the way up the trunk, as if someone had climbed higher and higher in a panic. 3 more bodies turned up scattered between that cedar and the tent, along a path that suggested a desperate climb back toward camp. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin were the last three, their official cause of death recorded simply as hypothermia. But Slobodin's skull carried a hairline fracture, exactly the kind you'd expect from one heavy, deliberate blow, not a simple fall. Investigators noted it, then moved on. 5 bodies were accounted for. 4 more were still missing somewhere in that frozen wilderness. It took until May, nearly 3 full months later, for melting snow to finally expose the last 4 missing hikers. They had been buried under 13 feet of snow, inside a hidden ravine much deeper within the tree line. Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, and Semyon Zolotaryov were finally found together, huddled in that frozen ravine. This is exactly where the case stops reading like a sad accident, because Thibault-Brignoles had suffered a massive skull fracture, instantly fatal on its own. Dubinina and Zolotaryov both had their chests completely caved in, ribs snapped in multiple places, force a coroner compared to a high-speed car crash. Yet their skin showed almost no external bruising anywhere near that damage, as if something had crushed them from the inside out without breaking the surface. Dubinina's body held one more horror still. Her tongue, her eyes, her lips, and part of her facial tissue were simply gone. Investigators later blamed natural decomposition in running water, but to the men who actually found her, it read like a fever dream. Tests on some of the recovered clothing also picked up unusually high, unexplained radiation, fueling decades of theories about secret weapons testing nearby. Soviet authorities closed the entire region to hikers for the next 3 years and stamped the investigation file secret for decades afterward. In May of 1959, investigators formally closed the case, and their final conclusion read like a shrug dressed up in official language. The hikers, they wrote, had died from what they officially called a compelling unknown natural force, a phrase that kept the story alive for 60 years. Some blamed a secret military accident, quietly buried, and pointed to strange orange lights other hikers reported drifting over the mountains that same week. Others blamed infrasound, invisible vibrations that can trigger blind, animal panic, or a rare katabatic wind violent enough to scatter judgment along with the bodies. In 2021, physicists finally ran detailed computer models on one very specific, slow-moving slab avalanche, small enough to leave almost no visible trace. It wouldn't leave the dramatic wall of debris everyone originally expected, yet could still deliver car crash levels of force to anyone lying beneath it. It's the closest thing to a real, testable answer that modern science has ever produced for this haunting case. But even now, it still doesn't explain everything that happened on that freezing slope in the dark. It doesn't fully explain why they cut the tent open instead of simply unzipping the door right beside them, or why some ran so far into the trees. Maybe raw fear alone did that to 9 rational, experienced people. Or maybe that fear was hiding something else entirely. Somewhere on that slope, in the space of a few terrifying minutes, 9 people made a choice they never lived to explain. Whatever finally comes out of Kholat Syakl's melting snow each spring, it never quite answers why they ran the way they did. If true stories like this keep you up at night in the best possible way, stick around for more real, unexplained cases.